Hi, it's Cecilia, and I'm really excited because today I've got a special guest for you called Dani Gardner. She's a business mentor for highly sensitive solopreneurs, and she's going to talk to us about how she's been able to live her purpose through her business and also her life. Dani is originally from Australia, but she's been able to travel the world. She's lived in places such as England, Spain, Italy, and she's been able to build a business that breaks a lot of conventions. She doesn't believe in being on social media 24/7. She talks about quiet marketing, and she's also basically created a life that allows her to live more, experience more, and use business as a form of art. On the journey, she's learned a lot about herself, and she's sharing lots of tips on how you can better understand your desires in order to create a life and a business that works for you. So stay tuned in for lots of insights and amazing tips. So I'm really excited to get started with our first question, which is, what does purpose actually mean to you, and how do you know you're living it?
So to me, purpose has always meant just really being fully self-expressed. I don't remember there being a time where I was really hung up on, this idea of that I think a lot of people get into is like there being one thing, So I think that's a big part of it to me, being fully self-expressed in whatever way that looks like. I think that our collective purpose is that to be fully self-expressed, to actually be who we truly are, to show who we truly are. And that in itself is a really big challenge, because what if who you truly are means you have certain opinions that or outlooks on life that are not popular, So part of our purpose is to sort of have the courage to be fully self-expressed in that. So that's one thing. The other thing is I'm calling it following my ooh, and we've talked about this before, in that's in terms of human design, the sacral ooh, so it's like following my curiosities and like what's drawing me, and see where that takes me. And yeah, I mean, I guess this is my view, and it's like, yeah, I think maybe this is what we should all do, but each person has their own journey. And I think the other thing for me is like our purpose, I think, just evolves as we do. And so, I think purpose is connected with our gifts. And so we might be going down a path where we're expressing certain gifts and contributing to others. And then there might be a time where it's like, okay, well, I feel like I've done that now. And then there could be like, yeah, a kind of change in direction to be fully self-expressed, doing something else, using another gift or developing a gift or that kind of thing. So yeah, that's sort of the overview of what purpose means to me.
I love that. And I love especially the fact that you've mentioned that part of being self-expressed means being willing to kind of voice your opinions, which may be different from what others have said. And I
Yeah.
guess, oh, go on.
Well, yeah, the other thought is just, and to live that life that you desire, and I guess we'll get into this a little bit more for the other questions, but what popped in is like, my desire was to leave my home country, and luckily I was in a position that I didn't get a hard time from my family, but there's that kind of thing as well that can be really difficult when you want to do something that those close to you really don't want you to do.
Yeah, I love that. And I guess in terms of the things that normally hold people back then from following their curiosities and, like you said, being able to follow their instincts and move to another country, what do you think are some of the biggest myths that stop people from living their purpose in business and in life?
Yeah, I think it's that idea that purpose means this one thing or something like that. Like, it's sort of like maybe sort of singular, you know. I think that's where people get stuck. The other thing is that this thinking that purpose is all about serving others. It's all others focused. It's like, how can I contribute, you know, all others focused basically. And yeah, so in that way, it's like very selfless. So yeah, I think, you know, they're the things that were, you know, somewhat of an obstacle in my path. I mean, when I realized these things, like they hadn't caused me a lot of challenges, but it was like, oh, right. So I've been waiting for X, Y, Z, and it doesn't actually need to look like that. And that's not really, you know, purpose is different to what maybe I've been led to believe it is. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that it's actually a huge part of it is to do with your life as well. And like you said, being willing to say that, you know, in your instance, you wanted to explore living abroad, and you had to honor your needs first for things to unlock.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I guess in line with that, what are some of the biggest decisions or commitments and internal shifts that you've had to make to really like pursue and align with your purpose?
Yeah. So there are a couple of key moments that stand out in my own journey. One was was it my very last corporate job? Yeah. I'd been there a couple of years, and I just, you know, I was the branch manager of this employment service. I had, you know, a nice little corner office with windows looking out to the Broadwater in, you know, in this place called the Gold Coast. And I just remember standing there looking out, and I was watching these palm trees just blowing in the wind. And I just remember going, I'm just not meant to be here, you know, or I'm not meant to still be here. You know, maybe this held some sort of purpose of its own, but I'm not meant to still be here. And that moment caused me to really start a more conscious exploration, I guess, of like, well, you know, what is it that I want to be doing? Where is this next path, you know? So there was that. Around about the same time, I also remember thinking, you know, I was, let's see, I was in my late 30s, so maybe 38, 39, something like that. And I remember thinking, so Danny, you know, you're nearly 40. What about children? Are you going to do the children thing, you know? And I had never had a genuine desire to have children. And I was, you know, thinking about it. You know, I'd had friends, probably not a lot of friends have children, but I guess the ones that I did see weren't very inspirational. Like my own sister, like I saw how her life changed, and like how, I don't know, frustrating it was at times. And I'm thinking, duh, like that's why I'm kind of hesitant, you know. So there wasn't a lot of good examples. In fact, interestingly, there's more positive examples of having children in Europe, in places like Spain, than in, you know, countries like Australia, you know, and maybe, you know, the US is the same. So in this little conversation I was having with myself, I'm like, yeah, so why is it that you don't want to have children, Danny? You know, I'm trying to like talk myself into maybe having it, or, well, I guess just exploring why. And I'm like, oh, well, you know, I mean, I want to travel, I want to do this, you know, like I was just, you know, thinking of all these reasons. And I'm like, okay, that's really great. So then what are you doing in suburbia in a corporate 9-to-5 job, you know? And I'm like, good question, you know? And so that conversation with myself is what made me go to my husband. He'd often said that he had this dream of living in Australia for 6 months and Spain for 6 months. Now he's his mother was Spanish, and he's British. His father was British, so he was he actually ended up spending more years in Australia. I think he left sort of England to travel the world at about 16 or 17. He was working on the merchant ships and cruise liners and stuff like that. So anyway, so that's what he had often said. And he had, family in Spain and that kind of thing. And so I went to him and I went, okay, so this Spain thing, when are we going to do that? Because I thought, all right, let's get something happening here. And he was like, let's see, April 2012, just like that, took him a few minutes, after like always talking about it. And, there was no real plan. And so that was about, that date was like about 16 months away. So all of a sudden we had this goal and that we could work towards, and we did that. We basically went to Spain. I took 6 months leave without pay. And while I was in Spain, like I wasn't working, actually I did a little bit of work for the company I was employed for remotely, but basically I was just, for the first time ever, a kind of housewife. I just got into cooking and really enjoying doing the laundry and, going to the gym and going to, to walking down the road to get groceries. I just really loved it. And I just loved being in Europe. So that whole experience made me go, okay, how do I want to spend, I was going to be turning 40 that year. So I was like, how do I want to spend the rest of like my next 40 years? And I thought, well, I know what I don't want. And I started like thinking about that and then looking at what I do want. And so that was sort of the catalyst to me then going, when we went back to Australia, some things happened with the company I was working for. And within about 2 weeks of being back, they started offering voluntary redundancies. And I was like, so that's how I actually was able to make that break into self-employment and things like that. So there was a few other notes I made here in relation to this. So I guess it was sort of that whole children question that went on that whole, and then let's see. Yeah, okay, it kind of follows on with the story. Once I got back and then, got a redundancy, then I started this, self-employment journey. I knew that I just absolutely had to go back to Europe for like an extended time. And then I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to get it. I know non-English speaking Europe is where I wanted to be, like France, Italy, Spain. So I'm like, I have to have my own business because I want to, it didn't feel good about just being, somehow looked after by my husband. I mean, I just wanted to have my own money and stuff like that. So I'm like, right, I have to make a business work. And so through that, like next year or so, what the realization that I had, so, okay, in my mind, I was like, right, we can't go back to Europe until, I've got X amount of clients or X amount of income, so that's got to be ticked off first. I've got to be successful first, and then, we can look at going back. So one of the things, the big epiphany at that time was that this is where I was sort of making my purpose about everyone else, and well, about income too, which was sort of about me, but it's more like, right, I've just got to, have these clients and before I can do anything. And I realized, no, like my purpose needs to include my desires, and they can't be deferred. They are actually required now, And so what's really quite interesting is that my business didn't actually really take off at all until I left Australia. And we, for the first year we traveled a lot and there was a lot of movement, and I was quite frustrated actually because there didn't seem to be the time or space to sort of really, invest into my business. But then once we got our first kind of long-term rental, things really started to move. And so that other part that was about me and my desires was, this desire I'd always had to spend time in Europe, to speak other languages, to experience other cultures. And it was like that was the necessary ingredient for me.
That's so powerful, because throughout you telling us about your story, I hear that you really had to connect very deeply to what you wanted, and you shared some lovely elements, especially for us women, because many of us are kind of thinking, this is the life I want, but this is what society expects of me with regards to maybe kids or job status or things like that. But it sounded like you kind of made a conscious decision that, you know what, this is what I truly desire, this is what I do not desire, and therefore me and my husband are going to start making steps towards it. I'm curious. Go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when you say you had to connect deeply, I don't even know if I did have to connect deeply, really, because all the information was there. It's just that I wasn't really, I was just caught in the day-to-day of, corporate bullshit and, whatever. So like there needed to be a moment for me to just pause, and I didn't have the practices then that I have now of like really reflecting on things and, all of that. So it was really just, there was no pausing really. So that moment to pause, the information was there, and I didn't really have to go digging. It was like, oh, right, yeah.
That's powerful. So I guess I'd love for you to dig a bit deeper in terms of, like you said, it took you pausing and doing things slightly differently. So what sort of like patterns of thought or actions did you have to stop and end in order for you to be able to move forward? And I love that you mentioned practices as well. I guess, were there new practices that supported that shift as well?
No, it was really just the question of children.
Okay.
And getting older. It was just like, okay, because I had assumed that once I got married that, maybe then I'll have some desire, to have children. And I got married at like 38 or something like that. So, by that time we'd been married, I don't know, 18 months or whatever. I'm probably mucking up the dates there a bit, but I was just like, still not feeling it. And because I guess the clock ticking is what, so I didn't have any beautiful practice that I all of a sudden started doing. It was just like the reality of life, and just like, okay, Danny, come on, what are you going to do? And, maybe I had, I think I do remember, one of my friends, she'd had a child, like my best friend really, and she was, we were like less than a year apart age-wise. And maybe like I remember her saying, I want to have another child before I turn 40, and maybe that's sort of what got me thinking, as well, that prompted me to ask my own questions. So yeah, it was really just sort of the things that were going on in my external world that made me go, come on, and yeah. And then just asking myself that question, like, why is it? And then hearing my answers and going, interesting. And you're not doing anything about that, though.
Lovely. So yeah, it sounds like what you said about being reflective and actually like inquiring within yourself, well, do I want that? Or don't I want it? And if so, where did that come from? And is it really what I feel?
Yeah.
So that was like a key sort of like, in terms of like thoughts and actions you had to shift. That was one of the main ones, it sounds. Lovely. And I guess from this journey of like transitioning and transformation, what have you learned about yourself that has had a direct impact on how you've designed your life and your business?
So one of the things is that learning how highly sensitive, or as I was making a few notes about this, I put hypersensitive that I am. And that has been very hard to acknowledge, because it's like I'm a type A sort of personality. I've always been a go-getter and, you know, results orientated. And so understanding this highly sensitive side has been really hard. In fact, when I first started hearing this term, highly sensitive person, I remember reading about it going, you know, oh, they feel things really deeply and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, oh, right, interesting for them, you know. Right. And so it's actually taken me a long time to really go, right, I'm highly sensitive, even to acknowledge that I'm highly sensitive, but then the depth of it has been hard to take on. And then but now that bit by bit that I have, and I've changed my business, like I've been able to stop, I guess, in a way, judging myself for maybe not enjoying certain things, or maybe not being able to have the sustainable energy for certain things. So that's been a pretty big game changer, that the whole highly sensitive person thing. And yeah, it just does affect me on so many levels, you know. And I've come to the realization where there's some things, like, I'll give you a business example. This is sort of an epiphany I've had kind of fairly recently in the last few months. So no doubt, Cecilia, in the training that you've done somewhere along the line, you've heard about, you know, asking for feedback, right, from clients and stuff like that. And I'm a bit of a market research nerd. And so that kind of thing, although I do tend to collect it a little bit differently, you know, at the beginning of a person's journey more so than at the end. But I sort of was like, yeah, you know, kind of shoulded myself into asking for feedback, right? And what would inevitably happen, especially if I was asking from a group, there would be a couple of people who'd say something that would just send me on this downward spiral, and I could not take it personally, you know. And then I'd be thinking, you know, don't take it personally, Danny, you know, and like all these sort of shoulds about that. And then I'd hear people say, you know, everyone's feedback is relevant. And I'm like, yeah, okay, everyone's feedback's relevant. Okay, yeah. And you know what I've realized recently? It's like, because I already thought this, but I dismissed it when I heard stuff like everyone's feedback's relevant. I'm like, you know what? Everyone's feedback is not relevant for me. I'm not going to take on that belief that other people have, you know. And so I'm going to be very selective about who I ask feedback from.
Right.
Because I'm going to ask it from people who I know we have a good relationship. And so even if they have something constructive, I'm going to be able to receive it, you know. Whereas I just know I can't receive it from someone who didn't really participate, or I didn't feel like they irritated me or something like that. Do you know what I mean? And so that's been a big epiphany, because I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to take it personally. It's just going to hurt my feelings. I don't think there's anything I can ever do about that. So I'm just going to be selective, you know?
I love that.
So that's one thing I've realized. And then I guess the other thing that I've learned about myself that has made a really big difference, especially my business, is learning about my human design and what that means, and experimenting with it. And it's all just been very, very positive and enlightening for me, and has also been the exact opposite of what I was previously doing. So it made, that alone has made my business just so much more easier. You know, prior to really applying and understanding, you know, I was doing the whole hustle, online all the time, trying to make things happen, freaking out, just anxious quite a bit, like low-level, constant underlying anxiety. And there are so many reasons for that human design can explain as well. So that's made a huge difference.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And that's one of the things I appreciate about your work. You really give space for sensitive souls to just be themselves and not fall under the pressure that's often spoken of online and in most like marketing rooms. And actually, I just thought it might be helpful because for you to kind of explain when you talk about a sensitive person, what that means for you, and maybe if you've got any more examples, some of the things you were doing before that didn't factor that in. And the reason I asked that question is because you mentioned the fact that you were rejecting it at first. And I think it's like, for me, I didn't know what it meant to be a sensitive person. So it wasn't something I'd identified with initially.
Yeah.
So in case, those listening are also like, what does that mean? And how do I know?
Yeah. And good question. And yeah, what you've just said is exactly how I felt. And the thing is, when you are just you, when everything you do is all you've ever known, it can be hard to identify. Like that whole thing of they feel things deeply. I'm like, oh, really? That's interesting. Not realizing that I felt things deeply, because there's this one side of me that can feel real, very, I don't know whether the word is insensitive or just like nothing. I don't know. There can be a part of me like that. But where I've had to realize that, oh, that's the feeling things deeply, is when I start talking about things that are really meaningful for me, I just get teary,
Okay.
And it's like this wave is coming. And it used to be upsetting for me because it's like, how embarrassing. I don't want to get teary. I don't want this. I don't want that, and always, because tears are seen as a negative thing, getting teary now, but this is what a highly sensitive person does, really. It's like, you touch on something that's just, I don't know, I guess it's deep. It's like, so that's been one of the things. I still struggle with that a bit, because it's like I would, I still mentally think, I don't want to go there. I don't want to touch on those subjects and show emotion, like that. There's other things like, another good one in a business sense, is this idea of, especially when it comes to like things like a course creation or doing like a live class or something, there's this teaching out there that basically says, sell it before you create it.
Yeah.
Have you heard that idea?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so with me, and I assume this is part of my highly sensitive thing, like that just doesn't work. For me, the pressure, like, shivers, people have bought this and now I've got to freaking come up with the goods. Like, that's stressful. That's like makes me anxious. And, so you've got to know which advice to take and which to discard. And for me, that's a discard, but it's such a big thing that's taught, so for me it feels way better. I just enjoy the creation process, be in my own creation bubble of a thing, and then I'll release it when it's complete. Then I can lean back, everything's done, and the whole process is a lot nicer. So more and more I realize what gets my nervous system like, kind of highly strung, and I used to, I wrote a post about this recently, rise to the challenge. Type A part of me is going, come on, Danny, you can do this. And I know I can, but what I realize now is, but I fry my nerves in the process. And then that has a whole hormonal effect of, higher rates of cortisol in the body, and what that does, and there's this whole hormonal impact on living that way. A lot can be achieved, but at a cost to your health, or my health, so yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So you had to really kind of tune it out or some advice and tune in to kind of understand well actually what resonates with you, what makes sense for you.
Yeah, but normally again, it just these epiphanies came from pain,
Mm.
from a lot of inner turmoil because I'd made certain choices about things, and it was only through like maybe kind of a long process of maybe feeling bad about something or not right about something or putting up with something. My most unpleasant experiences in business and really in life have led to my biggest insights. So it wasn't through just sitting on a cushion reflecting and I did have one experience like that, but generally they've come through stress, pain. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's important to know because yeah, there's a school of thought which kind of says that it's all about letting the insights and ideas come to you, but actually we also learn a lot from all experiences, whether they're good or bad.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
And there's another thing you mentioned as well, which if you're able to, I'd love for you to expand on. You said human design was also really supportive to you when it came to how you've structured your life and your business, and I would love to kind of hear more about that. How did human design support you?
Yeah. So, I was introduced to it by a coach that I was working with. And um, so, human design is basically a system for categorizing humans based on their date of birth, time of birth, location of birth. And through that information, you come up with there's a free chart that you can get. It's called a body graph chart. And humanity is divided into four, or depends who you talk to, five types, right? So the type that I am is called a generator. And so in the big picture of that, it means that my strategy in life is to respond. Now, I found this it's been so helpful to apply this to business. But I just want to say, when I first discovered human design and I started finding out about the other types, I just thought, oh, this is bullshit. Like, I don't like this. This is stupid. Especially as a generator, just felt like all the other types were there to either guide me or tell me what to do, or so that I did all the work and they relaxed, and it was something like that. I just thought, this is silly. And I was really exhausted myself. So I didn't like being portrayed as this sort of, worker bee and whatever else. But I realized through my own journey and insights that it's very different. I now think that being a generator is actually the best type to be, really. So effectively, in a business sense, what I had been doing is initiating everything in my business. And what that looks like is, I think I'm going to offer that, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to create that, and I'm going to, and I. And it's all about my own inner thoughts and inspirations, right? And so they certainly have a place, but for when a generator does that, things basically don't work. And so then you got to try harder for this thing that you decided you wanted to create to sell. And you go, oh, I better market it a little bit more and a little bit more and try a little bit harder and spend a little bit more money. And it's exhausting. And that's why in generators and manifesting generators, one of the other types is, they are generally exhausted when they come to human design. So that helped. There's like loads of different information in someone's chart, but the things that have been most helpful for me are the strategy, which is to respond, my profile numbers. So I'm what's called a 2/4. The 2 has this energy of a hermit, of, introvert sort of thing, and the 4, an opportunist. So it's a really interesting combination, because you've kind of got this very, pulling back, and then the opportunist, like at the same time. So it's really interesting. And when I learned about that, I was like, yeah, because I really need to, like, I love, like, for example, socializing, but then it has to come to an end, like there has to be a, when does this thing end type thing. In fact, if I don't know when it ends, I can be reluctant to go in the first place, because I need to have this bookending thing happening, start here, finish here, so I can go and have my free time, my alone time. But in a business sense, when I was reading up about this, something that really dropped for me was that this idea that I had, that I could spend a bucket load of money on Facebook ads, for example, to reach new audiences, like cold audiences, and then have clients, so basically have, a funnel, pour money in through Facebook ads and have clients pop out the other end. The penny dropped that probably wouldn't work for my particular type. And I spoke to a human design consultant about this, and I don't think anyone had really kind of come at it from this angle, but they're like, yeah, they agreed with what the conclusion that I was coming up with, so that was really helpful and really shaped how I did and viewed marketing. So that's been really helpful. The other thing that is, I'm spending a little bit more time thinking about, considering, is so in the chart, there are some, so you've got these, squares and triangles and, diamond shapes in this chart. The ones that are not colored in are called undefined. And so one of my undefined centers is the heart center. And one of the things that shows up in relation to that is this feeling that you need to prove yourself.
Right.
And so I can see where that, where that has created a lot of tension for me, especially with what I've worked out is I so dislike working with people in like brief containers, like a one-off session or a one-off class or something like that. I've worked out like the bigger containers work so much better, because then I know that person's committed to having this sort of like this, there being enough of a time for a change to take place. When it's these shorter ones, this is where I get a bit anxious, and my whatever belief has had people show up like this, where they show up for this group call and seem to want me to fix their business. And so that's reinforced this idea that I need to prove myself.
Right.
So a decision I've made recently is I'm no longer teaching live.
Okay.
Whereas I used to have this approach: I'm going to teach a live class, and then potentially that gets turned into a tiny course. So it's like recreated into short little lessons. So now I'm experimenting with, no, I'm just going to do the tiny course, and then I'm offering, when it first gets launched, a group discussion call. And so I've just got to turn up and respond, which is perfect for my generator self, Yeah. And the teaching's already done. If they need to have, come to the call having already gone through the teaching, So that feels a lot better. So that's just some ways that human design has been quite helpful.
That's fascinating, because I'm hearing so much self-awareness about what works for you, but also a very caring approach in ensuring that what you create and deliver is really supportive to other people's growth and their desired outcomes. And I, you know, when you mentioned the word experimenting as well, I quite liked that combination of words, really, of giving yourself permission to kind of do things, see how they work for you, how they work for others, but experiment, really, because that's one of the main ways we learn.
Yeah, for sure. Like I'm so used to experimenting now. Like the way I see it is, I think I want to do it like this, so I'll do it. And then sometimes I'm like, no, I don't want to do it like that. But I would never have known if I hadn't have actually tried, you know? Yeah.
Okay, and you've been on such an incredible journey. So perhaps for our audience, I would love it if you could summarize, I guess, the steps you took and maybe some of the qualities you had to develop to really go through that change in your business and life, just to give people the kind of like, you know, chronological, even though I know it can be quite circular steps that you took.
Yeah. So, yeah, I jotted down a few points to sort of kind of distill it in, you know, as concisely as I could, right? So really, I think the process started and continues to happen this way. I find it a really cool thing to do, is to recognize what I don't want. And I think this is a great thing to do in business for anyone who's like stuck or just feeling confused. Actually write down a list of things that you don't want. And it's interesting because it seems like, oh, but you're not meant to do that, are you? You're meant to write down what you do want, right? Well, that's the next step. But if it's actually quite fun, and it feels very like, you know, liberating in a way to go, I'm going to write down what I don't want, because it's actually pretty easy to write down what we don't want. But once we have that list, we can then go move on to what we do want. And it's really, we just flip, like we do a turnaround on those what we don't want statements. So that's really helped. Then the not getting hung up on what is my purpose. So one thing that stands out for this point as well, that I picked up off a mentor that I had in a group program, she would say where people get stuck is they're like, what is my purpose? You know, it's like forevermore, you know? And she's like, that is an unanswerable question, you know, because we're evolving all the time. And, you know, and she's like, really, what you're better off saying is, what do I want right now? Or like in the next 3 to 6 months, like bring it more into the present. And then you can just keep asking yourself that. And I think that kind of takes the pressure off too. Like, oh, what do I want right now? Oh, you know, you can kind of go with that. Then the following my curiosities and my oohs, like, ooh, that looks interesting. That's a big part of it. Making decisions and following through, even when I feel like, or notice that I'm starting to second guess myself. And I guess this is where a lot of people get stuck. So I understand enough about, I don't know, my brain and how it works to, you know, if I notice that happening, I know it's just the brain, you know, like it's different if something viscerally is happening, like in my body, but if it's just like, oh, what about, you know, all this sort of chitty chatter, I know to keep going, you know. And one of the things that has really worked, like if it feels really bad, is I can just say, oh, look, I'm just pretending anyway. I'm just pretending. And that, you know, that can kind of ease, so I can keep taking these steps. I mean, this hasn't happened for a long time now, but I remember using this a bit. It was like, yeah, I'm just pretending. Don't worry about it, Danny. I'm just pretending. And then what else? Yeah, the other thing that's been really key to the journey is acknowledging when things worked out well. and then remembering that in times of uncertainty. So I remember when this kind of idea kind of came online for me, and it was to do with when John and I got married. We actually eloped to Positano, like from Australia, basically.
Beautiful.
And and we'd basically flown from England to Italy. Now what happened? We got to the airport in England. Like John, I don't know, he got the time wrong or something. So when we arrived is when the plane should have been leaving, right? And we were getting married like the next day or something. And so there was this whole big super stressful event that happened at the airport, but we actually ended up getting to Positano. Then once we got to Positano, there was that big Icelandic volcano eruption.
Yeah.
And so all the airports started shutting down. And, I remember John going, right, okay, so in order to get back, we're going to have to go catch a ferry there, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And this is like, we hadn't even got married yet, I don't think. And I'm like, seriously? Like, let's just see what happens. But there was all these things that went wrong, basically. And there was a lot of uncertainty, and things just turned out all right. And it's sort of like, I feel like when I kept remembering, remembering Positano, like things actually turned out all right. And then, then I kept kind of having these notches on my belt, examples that I could go, yeah, but remember that you thought it was going to be a disaster, or you thought this and it was okay. Yeah. So I had like proof,
Yeah.
So it was sort of, so the point is that, like, acknowledging when things worked out well, even, when it looked like it was so uncertain. So, I think they're the main things.
Yeah, that's great, because I can hear a good balance between being able to take action and move forward, but also support your brain to be on board and to remember all of the evidence of things that have worked out, even when it looks really messy. I mean, a volcano, you can't get more drastic than that.
Yeah. And I think I just want to emphasize the big difference being is, if my body feels tense now, I will stop.
Okay.
Because then I'm getting into the realm of taking action that I'm not ready for. But if it's just sort of mental chatter that's not affecting my body, I'm fine to keep moving. I think there's just a huge difference.
That's lovely to point out. So thank you for emphasizing. So
yeah,
when you kind of notice that it's just, I guess, negative thinking or thoughts that aren't really supportive of you, you set that aside, and like you said, you can kind of tell yourself, I'm just pretending.
Yeah.
And I wonder actually if that kind of that, because what I love about you as well is that you've got a very chilled approach of showing up. You kind of share things that have supported you, your insights, and I wonder if that mental note of I'm just pretending kind of helps you to show up in a way that's just relaxed and laid back.
No, really, because I guess I haven't had to use that in a while, and I think it is actually fairly easy to just be honest. And I think I've just naturally, whenever I had an epiphany, even in the beginning when I didn't have any clients and whatever, I was just like, I have this desire, I need to share this with people. People need to know about this. But I always just seem to naturally weave in my story, my little epiphany, So, yeah.
Lovely. And then you mentioned that the distinction is when you feel at a physical level in your body, and no, that's when you stop. And I guess, is there anything else you do to support the physical no? When you say you stop, what does that actually look like?
Yeah, well, it's actually, up until recently, I just kept going, honestly. So it's fairly new for me now. But I guess what I find is just allowing time and space and not actually doing anything, and that's what happened most recently. Just new insights have dropped in, and I can look back in hindsight and see what happened and go, right, So if I ever feel that way again, I mean, I changed things anyway to, you know, to sort of learn from what was happening. But yeah, I think just time and space and letting things percolate and not really trying. And then the other thing, like getting back to the mental chatter stuff, I don't know, I probably don't have a lot of that, but the other thing that's really worked, there have been occasions where I'm like, kind of this sort of, well, who are you to do that, Danny? And maybe there's been even some examples, you know, kind of recently in the last year or so, just with pricing, for example. It's like, I think, oh, yeah, I'm going to charge this. And then I can hear this little kind of feeling thing of like, who are you to do that though? And then my response to that is, I don't know. Let's find out. Let's find out who I am. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. So I don't let myself be squandered by that. I just get playful with it and go, I do. It's kind of curious and amusing that I even heard myself say that.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm like, I don't know. You know, let's see. So that really works.
And that's the strength, actually, because a lot of people have a very negative relationship with that voice, but it sounds like you're like, whoa, I don't know, but let's give it a go. Let's play.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I've always been like that, but yeah. But that's probably for the last number of years. I can think of how that's played out in my business. Yeah.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, I would love to know how your beliefs around purpose impact the way that you do and you teach marketing and business.
Yeah, so I think the thing that really comes in strong for me is this idea of being fully self-expressed, which is what I kind of started with in terms of purpose. So in marketing, I see that as a vehicle to be fully self-expressed. And that's what so many people don't see it as. You know, they see it as a have to, and they've had so many trainings that they're trying to squeeze themselves into a way of doing things that, you know, it doesn't even, how could it ever feel self-expressed? It's just, it feels like a chore, you know. So for each person, like, I don't have any formula of what's going to work for people. I just listen to what they say, and the next question or a question to help, you know, bring to light what is for them, just, you know, it just sort of comes to mind, you know. And I really believe that if someone is doing something that they do not love, that they don't get a bit of a kick out of, then they're just, okay, they're either just not, there is another way, or they're doing it in a way, again, that they've been trained to do. They're just trying to make themselves do it in a certain way. Whereas if they just let go of all those shackles, they could actually do, I don't know, maybe like the same platform, for example. If we're talking about social media, they could still use the platform, but in a whole different way that felt really good and self-expressed. So there's, if there's any angst, it means there's another way. And for some people, the whole social media is just a big no. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. Let's find out how else, you know, how else could be done. And normally through conversation, the other things will come to the surface if you open up that door.
Yeah.
The other thing that I like to say is that marketing is like making art. So, and this is the thing that I picked up off Alexandra Franzen, it is, yeah. She had an email once, and yeah, so she put like, make art in, and she's like, yeah, it even, you know, it's so similar to marketing, you know, like it's make art. Like, how can you do your art? You know, what does your art look like? And I think that's just a really interesting thing to explore, because if I say to someone, do you feel like you're doing your art in marketing? And they can go, no. And it's like, right, so what would be your art? You know, and like, we're not talking about painting, you know, although that could be part of it, who knows? But yeah, so I think that's how it flows into my approach and my way of teaching marketing.
Yeah, I love that. And hearing that, I think it actually, helps you stand out because you kind of have messages that are very different to what others say when you talk about slow marketing or a quiet rebellion, spending less time on social media. So yeah, I resonate with everything you've said. I think a lot of teaching sucked the life out of you, and actually it's about regaining that vitality, that creativity, and yeah, just seeing it as a platform to express yourself.
Yeah, and like all of these little things that I'm known for saying, they just came directly from my experience, from my own discomforts. You know, they're just not these like nice ideas that just somehow landed in my consciousness one day. No, they came out of lived experiences that, yeah, often were not real pleasant, basically, you know. But it brought me to these epiphanies, and it's like, right. And yeah, the more I question stuff through, when I, it's like, for me, it's been very much about more and more noticing the dis-ease in relation to things, even relation to things that I've created, that I, like my mentorship programs. I came to this epiphany, realization just recently. Like, I've been running these for 3 years, and pretty much all of them, except the current one, have created tension in me. Like, that's huge. And it's because there was a bit of a shift this time around, and I just decided to do it differently. Yeah.
So I guess you shared so much with us, and I would love to know, like, what advice would you give to someone in the early stages of, pursuing their purpose through business and through the way they live as well?
Yeah. So one quote that is just always helpful for me, and it's when I ask this of other people or share it with other people, I know their face lights up. So it's really helpful. And it is, start the way you mean to continue. So often there's this view of, I got to like hustle and work, and I got to do all these things, and I got to work really hard to get to this thing. But my view now is, all right, if you start that way, chances are that's how it's going to continue, because it's going to keep requiring that. That would be like, there'll be no end to it. So it's like, just make sure that whatever you start to do is how you want it to be in the end, like how you want to be living, how you want to be spending your day, how, so that's a really good one. Start how you mean to carry on. And then the asking of just, what is it I want right now, in the next 3, 6, 12 months, whatever feels good, rather than what is it I want, what is my purpose? Just like, what is it right now? I think that's really helpful. And then, what I mentioned before, the make a list of what you don't want. I just think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
And then once you've got that, make a list of what you do want.
I love that. They're so simple yet so practical. And sadly, a lot of people don't do those. But hopefully, having heard that guidance, people will go away and journal on these questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so just a final fun question. What is the change you'd like to see in the world?
So there's a lot, really. But the one I decided to share was this idea of that people wouldn't feel compelled to make others wrong when the other person has a contradictory or an opposite view on a subject, on how to live, or on any of that. That we could actually respect each other's differences and values, and to actually be able to have these healthy discussions around them if both people are open to it. And yeah, to just have that healthy discussion or debate, or just, you know, to try and understand the other person's view, rather than dismissing it. I think that would make a real big difference, especially in the world that we're living in right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it goes back to the point you made about being self-expressed. We are all different. And
Yeah.
therefore giving us the space to kind of to just explore our ideas is so important for that. Okay, so I would love for you to share a bit about, you know, your offers, where people can find you, and, you know, any work or projects you're working on right now that will be supportive to those listening.
Yeah. So my two main offerings are my tiny courses. And the great thing about my tiny courses is that I define a tiny course as a course that has a total watch time of about an hour. Some are a little bit more, some are a little bit less. So that's what my ones are. They usually have about, I don't know, 5 or 6 lessons that are very concise, very practical, and they're just easy to get through and implement. And I have a lot of fun creating these, and there's some really good, in my little tiny course library, I've got courses on, like, for human design generators that we were talking about earlier, how to create a tiny course, how to organize your message, and things like that. So that's worth checking out. And then my other main offering is the Tea Room, which is a 3-month mentorship. It's a small group of women. And what happens is you come into the Tea Room with a project, an income producing project that you will be creating or completing during that 3-month container. And through that, you know, people get to have access to my guidance and feedback with what they're creating. I think it's been particularly helpful doing, you know, helping people with the naming of stuff, as you saw this week. So yeah, that's a really nice space where I don't know, it's like some really lovely conversations happen, and it gives some nice accountability too, you know, because we can have these ideas and plans and make beautiful plans and make beautiful calendars. But it's when you know that you've got to give an update on where you're at, you know, like you tend to like go, yeah, okay, I want to be able to give an update. So it just helps people follow through with their intentions, basically.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing that, and I can vouch for the fact that these are brilliant. Both the tiny courses and the Tea Room, I've worked with Danny, and they've helped me tremendously in being myself, honoring my energy, and still showing up in my business in a way that feels good to me. So I highly recommend them. I will include links in the description box and anywhere else.
Cool.
Okay. And so for anyone listening, if you have any questions, please do include them in the comments, and Danny and I will be very happy to come back and respond to them. And that's it for today. So Danny, thank you so much for your time, for answering the questions. There was so much more I wanted to ask, but I was mindful of time.
Yeah.
So thank you for your wisdom. And I know that everybody will gain so much value from listening to this lovely discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Cecilia. Thanks for inviting me into the conversation. So,
thank you.